Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Space Expander. You can call me Dan. I'm going to be showing you my Spike Brothers deck profile. This is an exceptional expertise Rising Nova deck profile, and also a charge deck because they kind of go in together. I've looked at a lot of other decks, and they don't really go up to par the way I would think that they should. There's not a real solid base for them to play off, and so they get a lot of ability and power and everything. Don't get me wrong, but there's always just something I see that could go wrong compared to the combos that I see in this deck. And believe me, I've play tested this deck over and over again, and this deck is the combination is extremely good. Of cards and just the way that all this works together. So I'm going to show you my deck profile, and basically it just works off of getting a lot more attacks and a lot of power. It's kind of like a different version of Spike Bros if you want, or a combination of Spike Bros and Royal Paladins, something of the two. But anyways, the main grade 3 is Exceptional Expertise Rising Nova, and his main ability is during the turn, when your G unit stride, choose up to one of your Vanguards, and it gets until end of turn. Auto Vanguard Circle, Counterblast 1. Choose a card from your hand and put it into your soul. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, you may pay the cost. If you do, search your deck for up to one card, call it to an open rear guard circle, and shuffle your deck, and that unit gets plus 10,000 power until end of turn. So it basically just calls a card to rear guard and gives it plus 5,000 power. So it's very good skill for striding. So basically, attack, counterblast 1, card from hand to soul, call a card, gets plus 5. Its GB2 skill is basically the same thing. Choose a card from your hand and put it in your soul, and then this is not when you stride, but basically when he attacks, choose a card from your hand, put it in your soul, and then you can call a card to rear guard circle. So Exceptional Expertise Rising Nova is actually a really good card for this deck because of the fact that it can make some really good combos happen. So the other grade 3s are for Bulldozer Dobe. So we have, basically he has the charge ability. The charge ability, if you don't know what it is when a card is called to a rear guard circle with an effect, then at the end of the battle that it attacked, it has to go to the bottom of the deck. So the benefit about this is that you can get extra skills off of it, but you also have the problem where you can't keep rear guards, but in a sense that's not actually a problem because you can use it to your advantage, because you can call another rear guard to the circle it left. So Bulldozer Dobe is a really powerful grade 3 for this deck because he gets plus 10,000 power when he's charging, so he becomes a 21k rear guard. And if you call him with an effect like Rising Novas, he becomes a 26k rear guard standing alone. So he's really good. So now we're going to go to the starter. It's kind of an odd jump, but there's a good point. The starter is Mecha Trainer. So Mecha Trainer's ability is basically Counterblast 1, retire him, and then search your deck for up to one grade 1 or less Spike Brothers. Reveal to your opponent, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So basically, he's really good for keeping your hand in good condition and also getting the card you want into your hand. So grade 1 or less. So you can put a heal, you can put a perfect guard, you can put a stride enabler, or you can put one of the other cards that I have. He also has Forerunner, so when he's ridden by a Spike Brothers, you can call him the rear guard. So that's the starter. So for grade 2s, I run 2 Wink Killer Misery. Now Wink Killer Misery is actually, she's a good card, and a lot of people who have Spike Brother decks are like, oh, you should run 4 of them, or you should run 3 of them. But I'm like, her skill costs a lot. So the problem with that is that, you have to Counterblast 1, and put a card from hand to soul. So this downs your hand a lot. So if you use her skill and Rising Nova's skill, you actually lose your hand a lot. So I don't use her as much, but basically her skill is when she attacks, if she's boosted, you can counterblast one, choose a card, put it into Soul, and it's also GB1, so keep that in mind. Choose a card from your hand, put it into your Soul, and then search your deck for a card, call it to open rear guard circle, and then that unit gets plus 5,000 power until end of turn. And you also have to shuffle your deck, of course. But so her ability is not bad, and there are some combos you can play with it, but she puts too many cards into the Soul. Like, using her over and over again, you can end up putting too many cards from hand to Soul and losing a lot of your defense. And this deck usually, these decks usually do that, but this deck doesn't actually have that problem if you play it right. So, which is really, really good. So the next card we have is a really good combo card. 3 Axe Diver. Now, Axe Diver is incredibly powerful, and he's rising specific, so you can't use him in any other deck. Basically, when he's placed on GB1, he has a charge ability. When he's placed on rear guard, Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, and when this unit is placed on rear guard target, if you have a Vanguard with Rising in its card name, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose up to one of your rear guards, bind it face up, and call that card back from the bind zone to an open rear guard circle. Then, if this unit is charging, the unit called with this effect and this unit get plus 5,000 power. So you get to power up 2 units for 5,000 power if you use his skill. So he's really good because, like, let's say maybe we have a card that already attacked. Maybe we attacked with a Bulldozer Dobe in the right front row, and then we attack with our Vanguard. We can then call him and bind Bulldozer Dobe face up, and then call him back, and he gets plus 5, and Bulldozer Dobe gets plus 5, and he's charging, so he gets to another plus 10k. So you can see how that combo can really, really work, and stuff like that. That's just an example. The other one is a really good card, also a rising specific, so you can't use it in any other decks. When this unit is charging, until end of turn, he gets plus 2,000 power. And when this unit's attack hits Vanguard, if you have a Vanguard with a Rising in its card name, search your deck for up to 1 card other than lethal forward from your deck, call to an open rear guard circle, and shuffle your deck. So basically, if his attack hits, you get to call another rear guard, so you get an extra attack. He also has a charge ability. Excuse me. And because he has the charge ability, he can go back to the deck very easily, and then he can get charged and get more power and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of plays you can play with him. His on-hit works really good with Axe Diver. So the other card I have is 3 Mayhem Tiger. Now, Mayhem Tiger has been at least a very finicky card because people misinterpret his ability a lot. Basically, his ability says he has a charge ability, and his other ability says auto rearguard circle GB1 Soul Blast 1 when your opponent put a unit on rearguard circle, not placed, put a unit on on Guardian circle. Excuse me, I said rearguard, but it's Guardian. During the battle that this unit attacked a Vanguard. If this unit is charging, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or less Guardians and retire it. So people say, oh, you can only use this skill once. That's actually not true, because you put a card into Guardian Circle more than once. I can use this skill more than once for every card that is put into the Guardian Circle. Other times people say, oh, well, I used a Quintet Wall. They all were put in put all at once. Well, he can pay the cost all at once and retire all of those cards. So basically, if you have enough soul to pay the cost, you can retire anything grade 2 or less. So the only things that really he can't retire, and intercepts also count, because people will say, oh, I intercepted, I didn't actually place the card. Well, it's not place, it's put. So I can still retire your unit. So there's a lot that you can't guard with. The only things you can really use to guard his ability is perfect guards, which if I retired it, then the nullify effect would still be in effect. So it wouldn't matter if I retired it or not. G guards, which are not grade 2 or less, and also grade 3s, and there's a grade 3 in Dimension Police, which gives power to the Guardians, the grade 3 Guardians that it puts in a Guardian Circle, so that would work. So he's kind of a difference between giving lots of power to your rear guard and or having a like a guard restrict. So he's got a lot of guard restrict, so that's pretty good skill if you can pay the cost. The other ability is the other card is Frog Raider. Basically, his skill is GB1. When your unit with the charge ability is placed on a rear guard circle in the same column as this unit, due to an effect from one of your cards, if you have Vanguard with Rising in its card name, stand this unit. So basically, you can get an extra column because he stands when you call a charged unit. So he can be pretty good in his respective times, but he also doesn't have the charge ability himself, so he can't go back to the Guardian or back to the rear guard. So I'd be careful with him, like especially when you're playing a Link Joker or something, because they can lock him. The other card we have for the grade 1s is Airforce Eliza. She's a really good card. She can be a really good card in combo with some of the big powerhouses. So like Lethal Forward, and she can make even a self-restanding column with Axe Diver because of her skill. Basically, let's say we have an Axe Diver here. So I'll explain her skill, and her skill is when she boosts a charging unit. So let's say she boosts Axe Diver. You can pay the cost, so it's Counterblast 1, and you can then bind that card face up, and then call it back to rear guard circle, and that unit gets plus 2,000 power, and this unit goes back to the deck. So if you do that with Axe Diver, you can then use Axe Diver's skill to then bind her face up and call her back, negating the fact that she has to go back to the deck. So it just restands itself. So it's a really good skill there, and you can also use her to get more attacks with like Lethal Forward and stuff. Especially Bulldozer Dobe can be really menacing. Like a two 26k attacks or something can be really intimidating. So that's Airforce Eliza. She's a really helpful card in this deck. We have 4 Acrobat Verdi, and Acrobat Verdi is the searcher for Rising Nova, and he's also the Stride Enabler, so there's not much to say there. It's basically the same. Basically, you call him rear guard circle, reveal a grade 3, search for Rising, and then put him in your hand and discard a card. Same old as just all the other ones. Then we have 4 perfect guards. These are the counter charge perfect guards. They're very important because sometimes you do need a lot of counterblast. And one of my sort of unspoken rules of this deck is always have 1 counterblast when you're playing. Like never counterblast everything unless you're absolutely sure you're going for game or whatever. Because if you don't, if you like counterblast everything, then later on the next turn you'll be like, oh, now I can't pay the cost for any of my abilities, so I can't actually combo. So that is a problem there. So next we have 6 crits. So these are 4 of the 4 Lyre Lips. So basically, her ability is the copy for all the G Stride stuff. When your Vanguard with Rising in its name attacks, you can put her into Soul. He gets plus 5,000 power, and you can draw a card. So she's good for upping your Soul, and also like getting power to your Vanguard, which can be really handy. 2 Silence Joker. He's like your last ditch effort card. I mean, he's a crit, so you do need him, but you also need. You can use his skill at times. It's like if you have no counterblast, it's like, oh, put him into Soul and countercharge 1. So now I do have a counterblast. I can use his skill. So it's very important. So 2 of him, and probably a really important card, which is stands, even though I wish they weren't stands, they still are really good. 2 Devil Watch. Devil Watch has a charge ability, and basically when GB1, when he attacks or when he boosts, if this unit is charging, you can counterblast 1, soul blast 1, and he gets plus 3,000 power. So basically, he becomes a 7k rear guard, and you can countercharge and soul charge. So I find him really, really helpful when you're using, when you're needing that counter charge and stuff like that. He also can unpay the cost for Windkiller Misery's skill. Yeah, so she counterblasts 1 and then card from hand to soul. He countercharges 1 and soul charges 1 from the deck. So it can kind of keep you from using that extra little counterblast, so that can be handy. So then we have 4 draws. The draws are very important because you want to keep your hand up. So you can defend your opponent's attacks, because they're most likely going to go just as ham at you as you are going ham at them. And I mean that in a good way, not as bad word. But anyways, all right. So the final one is just 4 heals. Nothing special about that. And I would put in the new G Guardian that I came out with in Fighters Collection 2017. But I don't have it right now, anyways. So the strides are pretty good. So we have 2 great Villainess Dhampir Lily. Dhampir Lily is a good card to start with when you don't really want to start with Supernova, which is our next card we're going to talk about. When she attacks, basically if her attack hits, then you can call a card from your hand with the charge ability. It gets plus 5k, and then when it goes back to the deck, you get to draw a card, so you don't actually lose anything from hand. And sometimes it can be better because you might get a better card that you draw, and you can also get a charge card that you need into the deck. So 2 of her, just because 1, you need to flip a unit sometimes, and also if you want to use her later in the game when you might maybe do counterblast everything, maybe your opponent survives your final big play, then you want to make sure that you have something you can still do. One of the things is, she's also really good on the starting stride. When you attack, if you call a lethal forward with rising skill, you basically, either of those attack hits, you get an extra attack, or you get a more powerful boost or something. You basically get the idea. So it's going to be really, really good skill there. So next card we have, which is a really good card, is 4 Great Hero Rising Supernova. And I'm actually surprised that I got that, because it's usually quite a big tongue twister for me. But anyways, his ability is basically, when he attacks, you turn up a card in the G zone, and then choose 1 rear guard for every face-up Great Hero Rising Supernova. See, it's a tongue twister for me. And you can have it become charge. So this is really good because you don't have to have the unit the unit doesn't have to have charge. So you can charge like 3 rear guards whether or not they have the charge ability, which is really, really good because it keeps you can call a crit and put it back in the deck, which is really cool. Not that you do that too much, but it also is. It's a really, really exciting ability, especially like when you're using Windkiller Misery, because she doesn't have charge. But then you use her skill, call a lethal forward, and then she goes back to the deck. And then if the lethal forward's attack hits, you get to call another card and attack again. So it's a pretty cool skill. So his other ability is basically if you have 4 charging units, you can give every unit plus 10,000 power. And this includes your Vanguard. So it's units, not rear guards. It's units. So everything gets plus 10,000 power. So mega, mega power and mega, mega attacks. So really good skill there. Another card is Great Villain Dirty Picaro. Basically his ability is when he attacks, if you have or GB3, Counterblast 2, choose a card from your G zone, turn it face up, and then choose a card from your hand and put it into your soul. So he's really good when you have very little in hand, but you still want a really good solid field. Because he can call one for every unit in your G zone. So it's basically attack and call one for every unit in your G zone. You have 4 face up, call 2 columns. Set up how you like it. So he's a really good card, so you want to keep 2 of him because he's an important card to have, especially when you're attacking, when you really want to set up a good field. And he can be the finisher sometimes. The other card I have is Element Sebreeze. And when he or if your opponent's just stuck on grade 2, you can then use him to stride anyways. So it works really good when your opponent's trying to like stick you for your stride ability. The other grade 4 G guard, not the stride, but is Juggernaut Maximum. And this card I will switch probably for Linus, that new G Guardian, and because he's really good because basically you get +10, you get +10 for every 2 open rear guard circles for his ability. But this guy, he doesn't work as good in this deck because you don't usually have too many rear guards. His ability is basically when he's placed on Guardian Circle, choose one of your rear guards, give it +10,000 power, and then at the end of the turn it goes back to the deck. And he gets +10,000 power. So you got to keep that in mind. If you don't have any rear guards, you can't use his ability. So to fix that problem, I put in 2 metal element Scryew. And his ability is basically when you placed on the Guardian Circle, if you have a G unit face up in your G zone, you can discard a card from your hand, and then he gets +10,000 power. So he's really useful for that. Especially when you don't have any rear guards. Now, a really good card is Excellent Cheerleader Aery. You don't have to have any rear guards. If you have 3 or less rear guards, then she gets +5,000 power. So basically, if you have no rear guards, you get power. So it's really, really good in that sense because you just get power off of basically nothing. You know, basically you don't have anything, get power. So that's a really good skill. So I'm going to show you just a couple spam combos. I showed you one with Airforce Eliza and Axe Diver. I'm going to show you like at least one more. So I got to find him. So a really good combo is Axe Diver and Lethal Forward. Now, if we have a Lethal Forward, this is Lethal Forward, and we have Axe Diver, we have enough to pay the cost for his skill enough to do it like more than once or something. Let's say we have a Lethal Forward in our rear guard circle. He's charging, we attack, his attack hits, then skill, we call a Axe Diver. Axe Diver's skill, bind a card face up, call it back to the rear guard circle, gets +5, he gets +5, so you get the idea. You can basically just spam this all day, get an extra attack, then he'd go back to the bottom of the deck, then attack. If his attack hits, then you can basically call him back, do the same thing all over again. Bind, call back, you know. And he's just that big spam combo, which is really kind of fun to play, especially when your opponent's not expecting it. So you kind of force your opponent to have to guard something, you know, because you'll get more attacks out of it if they don't. Another good small spam combo is kind of includes the it includes Windkiller Misery. I was kind of alluding to it in one of the things. So let's say we have our Supernova on the Vanguard circle. We have Windkiller Misery, and we want to call Lethal Forward. So there's a way you can do this. Let's say Windkiller Misery is boosted. We attack with our Vanguard, charge her. She now goes back to the deck when she is done attacking. So then he's done attacking. We attack with her. She's boosted. Counterblast 1. Soul card from hand to soul. Search our deck for Lethal Forward. Lethal Forward gets +5,000 power. Then she goes back to the deck. So now, if his attack hits, spam combo with Axe Diver. Bind, call back. You know, so you can just kind of do stuff like that with Rising Supernova's skill, because he's really good for a lot of spam combos. So, other than the other one I showed you with Airforce Eliza, there's not much else I can really show you. Oh, actually, before I do that, I probably should show you one very important spam combo, which is kind of it's not even really a spam combo. It's not a defensive, it's more offensive. So, let's say we have our starter, and we don't have Rising in our hand. But we do have a Bulldozer Dobe in our hand. Because we have a Bulldozer Dobe in our hand, he can search for the stride, or the he can search for Acrobat Verdi, which is the searcher for the Rising. So basically, you use his skill, search for an Acrobat Verdi, and he gets retired. So he gets retired. You search for an Acrobat Verdi, call him to rearguard circle, show your opponent your Bulldozer Dobe, and then boom, boom, search for Rising, put him into your hand, and shuffle your deck and discard a card. So it's really good because you can power up your rearguard circle a little bit by adding a 7k rearguard, and also you get Rising in your hand. So it's really good to have that ability to just sort of defend yourself and be able to not have the wrong stride, or the wrong ride, I should say. So it's a really good deck. It's not the meta, but it is a very good deck if you know what you're doing. A couple things is that it's not as hard to hold your hand, because a lot of the Spike Brothers decks just completely abandon hand and defense for attack. This deck can actually do fairly well with the hand if you know what you're doing. Also, a kind of unspoken rule, I guess I said it maybe before when I was talking about the Counter Choice Perfect Guard, is that you always want one counterblast that you can use so that you can pay the cost for a skill later on. And taking a lot of damage doesn't actually bother you too much, because you're going to use quite a bit of counterblast anyways. You get a lot of soul in this deck, so any cards that use a lot of soul blast, excuse me, like Mayhem Tiger, work actually fairly well. So you can use Mayhem Tiger, and basically your opponent won't be able to guard unless they have like 30 cards in hand, and like to just burn your soul out. So they're never gonna really burn your soul out. So I hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. This was probably the one deck that I've built that's seemed to be really, really powerful, at least to me. I hope you guys enjoy it, and if you want to try it out sometime, build it, or whatever you want to say. I will probably come out with some sort of deck profile later on. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and you have a great day.